Well, those Bengals have a pulse after all. Thursday night football, Pittsburgh Steelers, 4-1 coming to town. It looked like the Bengals were doomed to struggle the rest of the season. And the ageless wonders, but the ageless wonder on the Bengals side, Joe Flacco throws for 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 340-plus yards. Bengals win a thriller 33-31 against their heated rivals, and we are here to talk about all of it on this Friday afternoon. What a game. And I know my co-host was there in person. I mean, he was still working in person there. He was watching the game. He's shooting videos. He's doing all kinds of different stuff. But this is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, part of the Believe Podcast Network, BLEAV, and the Believe in Cincy podcast channel, along with a slate of other great shows. Believe in Cincy, BLEAV, CINCY. Go check it out through your favorite audio streamer. And as we've mentioned before, we are fortunate enough to be presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, as well as FOCO, the fans-only company, and their exclusive line of Bengals merchandise. I'm Anthony. He is John. John, you were there in person. I assume that crowd was electric, my friend.
It was one of the most unique Bengals games I've ever been to. Maybe the most unique one. I don't know. Like, I think obviously the playoff win against the Raiders is definitely up there because that was something that people my age had never seen before. But just the situation that the Bengals were in, I mean, I guess the situation that the Steelers were in too, it's Joe Flacco versus Aaron Rodgers, but it's also Bengals versus Steelers. And the fact that Joe Flacco, at the young age of 40 years old with gray in his beard, is capturing the hearts of a starving fan base that watched just terrible football for the past month. To hear Joe Flacco chants ring out through parts of Paycor Stadium, I never in a million years would I ever think that this is where they would be in the season. And I know we've said something to that tune a couple weeks ago from the negative side of things, but now it's being said from the positive side of things. This is definitely the craziest Bengals season that I've personally ever covered. And I think you yourself and everyone following along can say the same.
First of all, don't make fun of people with grays in their beards, my friend.
You don't have any gray in your beard.
Oh, I do. You gotta look. You gotta look at it there. But no, you and I took the air earlier this week, and we were saying, I think the Bengals will keep it interesting, keep it close, but they just don't seem to have enough oomph, and they almost didn't. There were some situations on defense that were absolutely mind-boggling. I think there were either scores or massive plays on a 3rd and 11, a 3rd and 19, and a 2nd and 20 by my count in this game. And man, somehow the Bengals got just enough turnovers. They won the turnover battle again, 2-0. The Bengals took care of the football, and John Sheeran, they ran the football. They were able to run the football. Chase Brown with 10 yards a carry or somewhere hovering around that in this game. That was key. And then, of course, Jamar Chase doing Jamar Chase things, even with a couple of drops and or one that I thought wasn't a drop on the sideline there where he dragged his feet. But whatever. The Bengals did a lot. And I got to tell you, man, Joe Flacco, I know some of those are easy completions and some of those are things that, you're supposed to do as a quarterback. But that was a borderline clinic that he put on last night. And for 342, I know he's over 340. He had a drop by Chase Brown that could have gone probably 20 or so yards on a dump off. You had, it ended up being a touchdown the very next play to Chase, but there was that bobble drop in the end zone. And then that one I mentioned that was kind of a weird call where he dragged his feet, but they said, I guess he bobbled it. There are a couple opportunities where he could have been close to 380 in this game. And I remain very impressed with not only his arm, his decision-making, but John, the poise in a big game. And even, I don't know if you caught this, even after Evan McPherson hit what would become the game-winning field goal, the Bengals sidelines erupting, and Joe Flacco sitting there. He doesn't even have a smile on his face. He's just sitting there on the bench, just kind of looking around. And, we talk about Joe Burrow being Joe Cool. I think aside from the experience and the arm strength and some of the decision-making, I think carrying that carryover of a confidence, that carryover of I'm not going to get too rattled in this game if things aren't going well, that Joe Burrow has. Now, I don't know Jake Browning all that well. I don't know how he carries himself in the locker room, but I am seeing some similarities. And I think that when you see a guy as a Bengals teammate, you see a guy who comes in to replace a quarterback, and you see, okay, this should be an upgrade talent-wise, but he's able to carry that confidence and that calm demeanor into that locker room that Joe Burrow carries with himself. I think that is kind of an untold or unspoken type of situation that's happening with this team, and they have this kind of quiet confidence even at 3-4 now.
I really like that point, because I think people are getting not lost, but like they're amazed at how well he's playing despite only being here for like a week and a half, right? That's the story. The fact that he was thrown into the fire after 5 days after being traded, and then he had a short week this week from his first game, which he said was the tougher battle, going from Sunday to Thursday. Obviously, you're not getting like a full real practice in between those 2 dates and everything like that. Everyone's amazed at the fact that he was productive and efficient despite minimal prep time. And I think you hit the nail on the head there, because while Jake Browning does have some qualities to him that made him an attractive backup option for the Bengals, at the end of the day, this was Joe Flacco's 218th game, including the postseason. Like, he's seen everything. And he said that it's a blessing and a curse to have that knowledge, because sometimes you overthink and you just need to sometimes keep it simple. But I really do think that it all comes down to his arm being good enough still to just fit the ball into the windows where it needs to be, but him just having the experience that Jake Browning doesn't have. And with that comes confidence and just the level-headedness, the steadiness that you mentioned, to just operate the offense the way that it needs to operate. He's not doing anything necessarily special, but plays are happening that even sometimes when Burrow was out there, sometimes he overthinks a little bit. He tries to create on his own, and you miss some easy plays here and there. Obviously, it's not detrimental to the point where the offense is bad when he's on his game, but you saw the ball come out when it was supposed to come out on some of those in-breaking routes, taking advantage of one-on-one opportunities. Just a guy who knows what he's doing and still has the arm to get the ball where it needs to go. And that was the vision for this trade. The fact that Jake Browning wasn't doing that after 3.5 games, the Bengals recognized that they need a quarterback who can do that in order for this whole thing to be functional again. And the vision is fulfilling. And I think that's about as simple as it gets. Like, obviously, the more time he gets with the receivers and the offense in general, the more time on task, hopefully the better and more consistent the operation gets. But right now, this is just a quarterback who just at the end of the day knows what he's doing, because he's done basically everything that a quarterback can possibly do in almost 2 decades at this job.
There were a couple of, so he threw slants very well. He threw the intermediate routes well. He threw just an absolute drop in the bucket to Yoshi. That was about a 40-yard gain. That was a huge play in the third quarter. The one, though, also, and Kirk Herbstreit was harping on it when it happened, it was a deep out, I believe, to Chase. And he threw this, he floated that ball. He didn't float it. I mean, it was a nice throw, but it was a deep, long developing route to the outside. And he threw the ball before Chase was even out of his break and looking for the ball. And it ended up being a reception on the sideline. But that's the kind of rhythm, and those are the kind of throws that we had seen from Joe Burrow that we were not seeing from Jake Browning. He was late on his decisions. He was late with the football, particularly to the outside. And it caused turnovers. The other element to this, John, and I don't think it's coincidental, because Joe Flacco, one, getting the ball out quickly, making the right decisions, but the offensive line play the last couple of weeks, particularly the last 6 quarters, The sacks have diminished greatly. I think 3 or 4 in the last 2 games, as opposed to 4 to 5 a game, if not more. What was that Denver game? Did they have like 6 or something like that?
Yeah. Like that.
So you're seeing just cleaner play with a more competent quarterback under center. And what comes with that? Better run game. What comes with that? No turnovers, less sacks, less hits on the quarterback. And don't get me wrong, there were times, and I believe it was the Yoshi throw for 40 yards. Flacco took a shot when he delivered that ball. So he's and the one that Chase Brown dropped, he also took a shot on that one. But his willingness with improved protection up front, his willingness to take those hits and still deliver a ball where it needs to be is key. But I would be remiss. I mean, TJ Watt was a complete non-factor in this game, which is that almost never happens when it's the Bengals versus the Steelers. Amarius Mims played a solid game. Dalton Reisner stepped in at left guard and played well also. And really, if not for the Bengals giving up so many big plays on defense, this game could have been, I mean, the Bengals could have asserted even more control based on what they were able to do on the ground and what they were able to do with Joe Flacco through the air.
I agree. I also think that obviously the turnovers that the defense provided gave them the
Helped.
momentum shift kind of in the second quarter, and then the offense really started to find its footing. Of course, they didn't score their first touchdown until I believe like halfway or maybe even closer towards halftime. So they barely got that first half touchdown, the first one since I think week 2, right? So from the second quarter on, the offense was clicking on all cylinders. And yes, the run game was efficient, but they weren't leaning on it to open up the passing game. They came out of the gate, trying to identify the one-on-one matchups on the outside. And that's really where the weakness of the Steelers defense has been. Like, they were just charred to bits in the first couple of weeks because they're really stubborn with their man coverage tendencies, and teams were taking advantage of that. And Jamar Chase said himself, like, they knew exactly what Pittsburgh was going to run this game, and that what they did matched the scouting report. And they gave them inside leverage the entire time, which is why you saw Jamar Chase catch like 8 slants in this game, along with T. Higgins, along with Yoshivach and everything like that, right? So, like, they attacked the Steelers defense where they're the weakest at. And on top of that, like, the Steelers, I think they should be the most disappointed about their defensive line. Like, they're not this bad defending the run. I think they're about league average in terms of what the numbers say and everything like that. But they've always had that kind of advantage against the Bengals offensive line. And typically, when they get their guys going and Cam Hayward makes some plays, TJ Watt makes some plays, it gets the game out of hand. But the fact that didn't happen, and that the offensive line actually worked in cohesion a little bit and provided some holes for Chase Brown, it added another element to the offense. But the offense, I think, was still based around Flacco and his quick passing game, and then Chase Brown complemented it well, and obviously Samaje Perine had some decent runs in there as well. So it was just a full example of what complementary football can look like with a competent quarterback kind of operating the charge a little bit. And I think the Bengals just knew what was going to work against the Steelers, and the Steelers did everything in their power this offseason to build a secondary to try to stop Jamar Chase. And you can't stop Jamar Chase when he has a quarterback who is on time.
And it was a little bit of everything. It was the timing routes. It was the it was the quick stuff across the middle, let him get yards after the catch. All kinds of different stuff that the Bengals were utilizing. I do fear going forward a little bit, might teams, as this team gets more film with Flacco under its belt, might teams be a little more, especially with more aggressive defenses, that sort of thing. Might they be more adept at jumping some of those things? I don't know. But I will say that there were times that, Flacco mentioned it last night in the post game and that sort of thing, and this is where I think this is huge and a major difference between Joe Flacco and Jake Browning. He on that Yoshi throw again. I hate to keep kind of bringing that up, but he mentioned that both Higgins and Chase were double bracketed. They had double coverage on both those guys, and they said beat us with somebody else. I still held, and I'm not completely sure about this, but in my mind's eye, I'm thinking, if Browning was back there, I almost wonder if he would still try and force the ball to one of those guys, particularly with the volume of targets that Jamar Chase had and what he was able to do in that game. And instead, Flacco throws a beautiful ball for Yoshi and turns the game in the Bengals' favor. Big, big momentum swing there in the third quarter. I don't know if I'm right or wrong about that, but I was thinking, where would Browning have gone with that ball in that same situation? Would he have tried to force something to one of those guys? Maybe it becomes a turnover, incomplete pass. Maybe he makes the play. But to me, that situation and his recognition of, okay, both those guys are doubled, we're going here. And that to me is kind of one of the major differences we're seeing.
Yeah, I think the Bengals offense is like, it's like a 50-question exam. And when Burrow's on his game, he gets like 48 or 49 of the questions right. And even still, like it takes a lot for the offense to be as efficient as it is, because that's how much pressure is on him to perform at a near perfect level. And especially when you don't have a lot of opportunities for explosive plays because of how defenses attack you, right? Joe Flacco is just a better test taker than Jake Browning, because again, Joe Flacco is infinitely more experienced and has seen a lot more than Jake Browning. And the fact that, again, his arm is still as live as it is for being 40 years old, I think that's just the combination that just made him the better option to operate this offense going forward, especially when Jake Browning wants to make the big play, right? He wants to feature Chase and Higgins. He knows that, you know, he needs to lean on those guys. But when you press and you make the wrong decisions, then you put your offense and the team itself in just a hole that you can't come out of. And that's just what they saw too much. So Flacco, again, I don't think he did anything necessarily special, but you don't need to do anything special and still have a really good game, because that's just how this offense can go because of the horses that they have on the outside, especially with the mismatches that they have against pretty much most of the secondaries that they play against.
So for those who maybe rolled their eyes at the Bengals going after Flacco, trading for him, I mean, not only did he make you, at least take that back last night, but also if you're on the Browns side of the fence right now, Browns fans are losing it based on Flacco's performance on Thursday night. Interestingly enough, the Bengals reportedly, I think this is by Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer, the Bengals had Anthony Richardson, Russell Wilson, Stetson Bennett, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Tommy DeVito, Flacco, Jimmy Garoppolo, Josh Johnson, another ageless wonder and a guy who formerly played for the Bengals, Drew Lock, Tanner McKee, Davis Mills, Richardson, as I mentioned, Russell Wilson, and Jameis Winston were all on the list, reportedly, of Duke Tobin's list of quarterbacks to go after. And of all those options, they went after Flacco. They trusted the arm, they trusted the experience, they trusted the brain, and it, as of the last 6 quarters, it is paying off.
I really do think that, like, I can't imagine Flacco was at the top of the list. I think he ended up being someone that was affordable and
attainable.
Obtainable. A team that obviously had just benched him, so they viewed him as expendable. I don't blame the Browns for getting rid of Flacco. Like, they drafted 2 quarterbacks, and obviously, like, what Flacco was doing just wasn't enough. And there are just bigger problems than just the quarterback there in Cleveland. But of course, it's Cleveland. We're going to meme the hell out of it when they let a quarterback go and all of a sudden he's playing amazing, right? But obviously, the situation he's going into, or that he's now entered with the Bengals, is completely different than the one they just left with the Browns. But again, I don't mean to repeat myself, but they know what this offense is capable of, and they just need a quarterback that just makes smart decisions and can get the ball where it needs to go. And I think there were a handful of guys on that list that you mentioned that could have done that, but none of them were as more experienced and more capable of taking on the tall task of just being thrown into the fire immediately than Joe Flacco. So I think that's ultimately why they did that. And also, I think the trade compensation, it matched about what they were probably willing to give up anyways.
Good buddy and Cincy jungler Drew Garrison said, I got to see John Sheeran in the wild. What a night. Drew was there as well, I believe. So that was awesome. And go check out.
Passing out garage beers. He gave me a beer. It was nice.
Yeah, nice. I haven't tried garage beer. I need to do it. You gotta go check out Drew and the Bangalorean show that they have as well. They put that on, I think it's on Cincy Jungle's website, but if not, they have their own awesome show. And they have garage beer sponsor, I think, also for their show, which I'm a little jealous of, but that's okay. But, I just keep kind of going back to the patience. And, if you are a Browns fan, you were probably exasperated with Flacco, 4 games, two touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 1 win. And then you see him go over to the Bengals, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, kept one close on the road against Green Bay, and then pulled out a win against the division Steelers. So, I mean, I would be kind of pulling my hair out as well from the Cleveland side of things based on what I've seen from Flacco since joining the Bengals. let's talk about Chase and, the defense. There are issues all over the place. Jamar Chase, what was it? 16 receptions on 23 targets, 24 targets, something like that. I think he had a Bengals record in each of those categories for a Bengals receiver. Yeah, there was the bobble in the end zone. He took a hit when he was bobbling it, made up for it the very next play, scored a touchdown. I still contend that sideline catch that was ruled incomplete could have gone either way, but just an excellent game from him. You also saw him doing the hustle plays, blocking, going upfield and making some blocks. I hearken back to the Lions game in 2021 when Mixon had that, what was it, a 4th and 1, and caught a pass and ran all the way down the sideline, and it was Chase outrunning him and shoving a guy to his butt on a block there too. So that shows leadership. Obviously, Chase has the C on his chest, and not only doing the plays that are obviously recognizable, catching, yards after the catch, and all the stats he put up, which, by the way, I think he's up to 58 receptions on the year through 7 games, which is silly. But also showing leadership in a different way, hustle plays, blocking, that sort of thing.
I mean, he's just exactly what you want for that position, for being arguably the most talented player on a team that has playoff aspirations. I just feel like he just knows that he can do anything that he wants. And he's only 6 foot, right? So he's not mossing people like Megatron, but there is just not a route that he can't get open on. And there's just not a pass thrown his way that he can't catch. And there's not an opportunity in which he has the ball that he can't get extra yardage or potentially just go all the way. I think he just knows that he's that good, that fast, that physical for his size. And when he has, again, a quarterback that can just get the ball to him when it needs to, when the windows are there and when the separation is there, it's just impossible to stop. Like, the Steelers tried everything except, maybe guarding the inside of the slant, but they had Darius Slay, Jalen Ramsey, Patrick Queen, Joey Porter. Basically, the entire secondary went up against him at a certain point, and he was efficient against everyone. And yeah, 23 targets is insane. And naturally, if you get targeted 23 times in the game, you're supposed to put up numbers, but it was literally the definition of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? And T. Higgins still ended up with a casual 6 receptions for 96 yards and everything like that. But no, like, again, the Steelers, I think, very intently made sure, or they tried to make sure, that their secondary was built with guys who knew what they were doing, so they could not get burned by the 2024 Triple Crown winner. And unfortunately for them, they just boosted his chances to repeat as the Triple Crown winner for 2025 with this game. So no notes. Like, he's him at the end of the day. He's him.
Hands, feet, leaping ability like a wide receiver, running back in space is really kind of what he embodies. And just a little bit of everything from him. And, it's unfortunately to be expected. It was a little bit backyard football bullying. It's kind of like, stop it. Like, hey, we're going to keep doing this. And that's where I got a little bit like cynical, where I'm going, how predictable is this going to be 3-4 weeks down the road, especially when you're playing another contender, that sort of thing. A good defense, an aggressive defense. Might they jump some of this stuff? But I dare you to stop it at some point. I mean, that's kind of what the Bengals, Flacco, and Chase are doing. I dare you to stop it. Once you stop it, we'll do something else. But I will say that not many other teams, if they do have a star wide receiver, have another guy right across from him in T. Higgins. And I got to give Higgins his flowers too, because Higgins had a great, he did that trademark tough ball across the middle and shot into the end zone for a touchdown. He had close to 100 yards in this game. Arguably the biggest play in this game, though, John, especially with the way that the defense was struggling, which we'll get to in just a minute, that deep ball at the end of the game, where instead of cruising into the end zone and relying on your defense to get another stop, slid, was selfless, and forced the Steelers to use more timeouts, waste more time off the clock, and ultimately, with the way the things ended up going, the Bengals left the Steelers just 7 seconds on the clock, and just a selfless headsy play by T. Higgins. I don't know if his teammates were yelling at him, get down, and we didn't hear it, or if that was in his own brain, or a little bit of everything. But that, to me, is, we talk about leadership in the form of Jamar Chase going downfield, blocking for his teammates, that sort of thing. That, to me, is another form of leadership, and another play by a veteran wide receiver, mega talented guy that, I don't want to say it went unnoticed because people are talking about it, but that was a big play in this game. I was a little hesitant because I'm like, oh man, you're going to kneel it. You're relying on the kicker. And of course, Evan McPherson, another kind of MVP candidate in this one, but smart, heads up, selfless play by T. Higgins at the end of the game.
I want to say that entire play was the pinnacle of football IQ from the quarterback to the receiver, because Higgins had outside leverage there and he was stacking the cornerback. I forget who the cornerback was. It might've been Ramsey there. And
I think it was.
Yeah. Joe Flacco could have thrown it back shoulder because Higgins was already on the outside of him. And if that were the case, he may have gone out of bounds, in which the clock would have stopped. But instead, he lofted it and he led him towards back to the middle of the field because he knew that Higgins was getting a step on him. And then Higgins was very clean at the catch point. He caught it. And then obviously everyone's talking about it. Instead of going into the end zone, he slides immediately so they can drain more clock. So from the throw, the decision of where Flacco placed the ball, the fact that he was able to place the ball like that, because it's not just the zip, right? It's the touch that matters too. Yep. It's why people underestimate and underrate Joe Burrow's arm. The touch to make that throw happen, but the wherewithal of where to place it, and obviously for the receiver, Higgins himself, to make sure that he gets down and they can kill the clock. That entire sequence, that entire moment was just the pinnacle of football IQ, and it's just two really good players knowing what to do. I also want to give a shout out to T. Higgins' actual touchdown, because I've never seen him with that sort of burst after the catch before. Like he's been really improved in that area since he's came into the NFL, but that was a gear that I've never quite seen from him before. And I think the defenders for the Steelers were also shocked.
They were surprised. He
just blew by him, and it was awesome to see.
Yeah, I think they were a little surprised. And yeah, kudos to T. Higgins, of course, kudos to Jamar Chase and Chase Brown, Joe Flacco as well. Mr. Generosity, you are too generous. Victory Friday. But he writes, looks like Mike Tomlin was right to be worried. I didn't know what to make. I mean, of course, we're referencing that press conference. What was it, Monday or Tuesday, where he kind of, it was an open shot against the Browns, I guess. But I didn't know how to take what he was saying about Flacco, whether that was a complimentary thing or if that was, it kind of felt like a shot to Flacco, the Bengals, the Browns. I don't know. Or if that was because Flacco's had success against Tomlin and the Steelers in the past, if that was a little bit of a worry thing. How'd you take those comments by Tomlin earlier this week?
Oh, I thought it was completely respectful to Joe Flacco. I think Tomlin was recognizing that Joe Flacco is a starting level quarterback, and you just
why'd you get rid of him? Yeah.
And not just get rid of him, but you traded him to a division rival. It just happened to be the division rival that he was about to coach against. I just think that Tomlin knows that he's got the most job security in the NFL, and he can just kind of say those things. He's had a couple moments like that where he just says what he wants in front of the microphone, and obviously the Browns are the Browns and they're very easy to make fun of. So I think that was just an opportunity for him to just speak very candidly. But I thought it was a compliment to Joe Flacco at the end of the day.
Okay. All right. I did watch Mike Tomlin a little bit. I mean, there was only a little snippet on the Amazon post game of him addressing reporters after the game. And Mike Tomlin, after a loss, particularly a division loss and one that was so close, his emotional level and the size of his eyeballs are really intense. I'm like, dude, just blink. Like he was just like, and describing the game. I was a little worried about him, but obviously a frustrating game for their team. And ever since, their defense has come up and said, we just, Jalen Ramsey's been behind a microphone saying, I don't care about what the calls or if they weren't explained or whatever. We have to play better. We have to play better. We have to be better against these guys. They're going to get their own. We have to be better. And so they're taking accountability in a lot of ways on the Pittsburgh side of the locker room and their defense. But the Bengals defense, John, I counted now in 7 games, 5 opening drive touchdowns by the opposition offense and 1 field goal. The only one was the Denver game where they forced a punt against the Broncos to open the game, but the very next possession that the Broncos had, they scored a touchdown. So not only are they not getting off to good starts on defense, and that's putting it lightly, but they are still struggling tackling. They are still struggling to get off the field in what should be, I mentioned, the 3rd and longs, the 2nd and long, the 2nd and 20, they let Freiermuth go 60 yards for a touchdown or whatever it was. You cannot have this happen. And granted, one of the touchdown throws, I think, I forget who it was to, but it was right after DJ Turner, who's having a great run on this season here, an amazing interception yesterday. He came off the field with a cramped calf, and then immediately the Steelers score on a passing touchdown. I don't know how much that did or didn't play into that, but you had Cam Taylor-Britt, a healthy scratch, benched, and obviously no Trey Hendrickson. He was hurt. That hurt the pass rush, which was an issue this week as well. Shamar Stewart didn't really do much of anything. And so this defense, yeah, they can get those turnovers, but they're still on their home turf. They still allowed 31 points with 2 interceptions, and they are struggling in a lot of different ways. And you saw Logan Wilson, who was benched. He started to get more snaps towards the end of the game because they're like, we got to tackle somebody. We have to have some answer to Jaylen Warren, to these quick hitters that are being made with ease by Aaron Rodgers.
I mean, Demetrius Knight just had a game to forget, and that's why you saw more of Oren Burks and Logan Wilson out there. And of course, Knight wasn't the guy that took Wilson's job last week, or if that was the case, it was Barrett Carter. It's just, I think we're learning a lot about this defense, and most of it's not good, because the whole message behind it was, it's the coaching, right? You made Lou Anarumo the scapegoat, and you wanted a new identity and a new face and a new vision to bring out the best in these players. And I think it's kind of been a very much of a mixed bag, because DJ Turner, like you said, is playing out of his mind, and we definitely need to give him credit for that, because he is finally controlling his athleticism and finding the ball and staying with guys in a way that it makes that athleticism valuable. And I think that is so invaluable, especially because Cam Taylor-Britt can't get his own head on straight, and he can't earn trust with his coaching staff. But the tackling, like you said, it remains an issue regardless of who the defensive coordinator is. And at the end of the day, that's just guys not being enough on the field. So you're learning that, yeah, maybe there was some coaching frustrations and stagnation on that side of things, but at the end of the day, the people on the field still probably aren't enough to be confident in this defense being consistent. There might be weeks in which they get turnovers and they get key stops. They did, at the end of the day, get key stops last night, and that was good for them actually winning the game. But in terms of just reliability, I just don't know if Al Golden is the guy to make everyone here reliable, or if it's just the personnel is just not good enough. And I think there are people who obviously studied Al Golden's defense in Notre Dame. It's just not this. It's not even remotely close to what it is now. And obviously it couldn't be, because you can't do some things in college that you can do in the NFL. But I think you're just learning that the players that they wanted to really take that next step this year, some of them, if not most of them, just aren't necessarily taking that step. And that's why the defense remains in a very frustrating spot.
And to boot, we talked about this early this week. You kind of knew what the Steelers were going to do on offense. You knew they were going to go heavy. They were going to use Washington, the huge tight end, a lot. They were limited. They didn't have Calvin Austin in the lineup. They basically had DK Metcalf and a couple of tight ends that could catch the ball. 3 pretty good ones in varying respects. Jonnu Smith and Freiermuth and Washington, kind of the big boys.
4 touchdowns to tight ends.
That's 4 touchdowns to tight ends, and the Bengals still do not have a good answer against tight ends. And I say this, I got to thinking about this too, and you can only live in the past so much. But you've seen a decline in play from the linebackers, from other players in the secondary, and it's not so much the defensive line that this would impact, but ever since Jesse Bates left, there has been a noticeable decline. Players not making tackles, players not in the right positions. I'm not saying he's the end-all, be-all, but we did know that in the runs in 21 and 22, a lot of people credited Von Bell and Jesse Bates for being the guys that would line up the guys in front of them to make sure everyone's aligned correctly. They saw everything on the field from the back end of the defense, that sort of thing. You lose, Von Bell took a step backwards last year. We know that. He's gone. But I still contend that you losing Bates, that has hindered the defense greatly. You tried to replace him with a bunch of different guys. Geno Stone had a decent game against the Packers, but last night he took some abysmal angles, particularly on that Freiermuth big play. I don't know. And you've tried to get new linebackers in that are supposedly better tacklers, more athletic, younger, that sort of thing. It's not working. And the Bengals cannot generate pass rush regularly by someone not named Trey Hendrickson. So, like you said, you asked the question, kind of the chicken or the egg. Is it the coaching? Is it the personnel? I'm undecided on coaching because it's 7 games into Al Golden being the coordinator. I think personnel is an issue based on what I've seen. It might be a combination of both. But this, again, 31 points. Yeah, Steelers are a good team, but they didn't have a lot of their weapons at their disposal on offense. You knew what they were going to do. They were going to try and pound the football with Jaylen Warren, go jumbo, and set up play action, utilize those tight ends. You knew that's what was going to happen. Short, controlled passing with Rodgers, maybe pop the big one once in a while, and they still couldn't stop it. They still couldn't find a way to tackle. They still couldn't find a way quite often to get off the field.
I mean, you just wonder how many of these players are actual starting caliber players, and not just players that can start in a pinch and give you good games here and there. The consistency is just not where it needs to be with a lot of them. I think Jordan Battle comes to mind because he had some good moments last night. Obviously, the interception made it from a post safety alignment, read the play all the way. But he's been up and down this year, especially with ankles. Geno Stone, like this whole thing is bad ankles, right? Like he made a really good stop, being in the box and coming downhill. But unfortunately, when he's back in coverage, and that what he did against Frymuth was inexcusable, and it led to a big play. So you're right. Like since 2021, the safety play has declined, and the overall pass rushing production has declined, and the personnel up there has declined. I think in this game in particular, Aaron Rodgers loves to spam screens, and he gets the ball really quickly. So I think it was probably going to be tough to pressure him regardless, because that's just how they kind of run their offense, even with Trey Hendrickson out there. But you still would like to see the coaching staff, scheme up more pressures for these guys and be, cook up something in regards to just instead of them having to win these one-on-ones in the way that, you expect Trey Hendrickson to do. So there's a lot of things with that, but I think ultimately you look at how last year ended and how that was the expectation this year with a different scheme and having those players play full time. I think that sample size was ultimately a bit small, and you're seeing how, yeah, they can have moments of greatness and they can have flashes and they can have turnovers really tilt the game on the other end. But from a season-long standpoint, it's probably going to look a lot like this. Maybe a little bit better, but maybe not that much.
Yeah, well, it's got to improve somehow if the Bengals are going to make a run of it and keep this thing afloat. There was a report, I believe, by Ian Rappaport or somebody last night that still is saying December timeline for Joe Burrow's return. We'll see how accurate that ends up being. Yeah, he was there, and his hair looked like a mess, at least in pregame. I don't know what was going on with that. We're going to talk about the Bengals' viability going forward for a few minutes. After this win here, we're going to talk about it. But just want to remind folks that this is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, part of the Believe in Cincy podcast channel in the Believe Podcast Network. And we are presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I am curious to know who maybe made some money last night on this one, because the Steelers were favored 5.5 going into this one on the road, John. I think it's a little early now. I haven't quite looked at what's going on. I mean, it's a week plus away now for the next game, but the Bengals have the Jets on deck. I would assume they would be favored in that one based on the Jets not playing very well. Tough defense though. But opportunity for money to be made for some folks last night with the Bengals not only covering, but winning outright against the Steelers.
Yeah, 5.5 points is a lot. And you look at the trend of,
especially at home.
AFC North Thursday night games, interdivision, the road team has not won since 2015. And that was, we knew that, right? That was always going to be kind of the advantage of the Bengals back pocket. And sure enough, if you had followed the trend, then you made some money.
That's a crazy stat. That is oh my gosh. I don't know if that speaks volumes to the difficult nature of the short week and or the AFC North, both. I don't know. That's a crazy stat. We're also presented by FOCO, the fans only company. Both of the links to both of those presenting sponsors are in the show descriptions for our YouTube channel and on the Cincy Jungle Facebook page, the streams on those. So go check those out. FanDuel, go put your bets in, or at least scour some things. whether it is for other games this weekend or the Bengals game ahead against the Jets. And of course, exclusive Bengals merch at foco.com. And the link to the Bengals part is in our show description. And you can check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@ Bengals OBI. Check that out. And like I said, get the audio of this show and many others on the Believe in Cincy podcast channel through your favorite audio streamer. Well, a lot of people, John, said that this was a season-saving win for the Bengals, and I think it's right. Not only did they get a little closer to – this would have been – the Steelers, had they won this game, they would have had a 3-game lead in the division, and the Bengals would have been 1-1 in the division, and instead, the Steelers, I think, now are a game and a half up in the division, and the Bengals have a 2-0 record in the division, which is – and one being against the Steelers is always a biggie. So – weak AFC conference. This game showed a lot of resiliency. I still, for me, they're in a good spot to be competitive. I am worried if Burrow comes back, what that's going to look like being out for 2-3 months. But a down year in the AFC, the Bengals proved that they can beat a quality team at home 4-1. That point amount that they allowed, 31, and we just talked about the defensive struggles, that really worries me about the viability going forward. I think Joe Flacco can continue, not necessarily the pace he put up last night, but maybe more in between what we saw the Packers and last night. I think he can kind of keep that pace going forward, but this defense needs to shape up. Otherwise, it's going to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or vice versa.
You just got to take advantage of the weeks in which the defense should play better, right? Next time that they're out there is against Justin Fields and the Jets. And we've all seen kind of how that's been going so far this year. So that's a game that I'll say right now, like they should win that game, right? When the Bears come to town, slightly different story, right? It's an exciting offense with Caleb Williams. When he's on, that offense is firing on all cylinders. They have a really good offensive line. You don't really know at this point how that's going to go. But then the next game after that, after the bye, play the Steelers again, and then the Patriots, and then on the road on Thursday night against Baltimore, who obviously is very struggling at this point, but they're probably going to get Lamar Jackson back at that point. And again, it's virtually impossible to win on the road on Thursday night against an AFC North team. So, and then it's the Buffalo Bills after that, and then it's the Ravens again. So, like, it's kind of a mini gauntlet here starting after the bye, which is why I think the next 2 games are being highlighted by everyone. The Bears, I think, are still a pretty decent team, and they should, they shouldn't feel scared of the Bengals necessarily, but the Bengals should beat the Jets. And I think at that point, when you're at 3-4 now and you have a chance to be at 500, I think that in their minds makes what they did at the trading for Flacco a success, just to keep the season afloat and just see where things go. But yes, if they had lost last night, I think we would be looking at things a lot differently, not only from the next handful of weeks, but just from the season in general.
Kirk Herbstreit almost put it into the atmosphere. I don't know if I know you were at the game, but Herbstreit made a comment when the Bengals were up, 30 to 28 or something like that. And he said, I know I've been around these parts a lot. I know a lot of what all these fans are thinking. They're thinking 31-30 in a long walk to the parking lot or something like that. And I'm like, Kirk, why are you even putting that in the atmosphere, bro? But the thing that sticks out to me along the lines of most of those games that you pointed out, save for the Steelers again, and this is where I think Al Golden's really going to have to dial things in. You have multi-dimensional and or very mobile quarterbacks for most of those, and physical quarterbacks for most of those contests. Fields can run. Caleb Williams can run. Lamar Jackson, presuming he's back by the time the Bengals play them twice, he can run, and he is giving them fits. Josh Allen can run. So these more multi-dimensional guys rather than an Aaron Rodgers. Love is that way too. They just came off a game with him too. Lawrence, a little bit of that too, but you're going to see far more multi-dimensional and or guys that can move around very well in the pocket going forward or run on their own for yardage. That to me is where Al Golden's really going to need to tighten the screws on his unit, because if for some reason the Bengals end up improving on coverage and that sort of thing, but they do not improve on tackling. The quarterbacks with their legs can beat them just as easily as some of the stuff through the air.
I mean, they couldn't even get to Aaron Rodgers last night. He was
right,
scooting and moving around at 41 years old, right? So yeah, that's kind of an issue. You know who else can scoot? I guess Joe Flacco on an impromptu.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean that is the nature of the NFL now. Like, you expect quarterbacks to not be statues, and you need to take advantage of that. And it's not truly 11 out of 11 like when you play Baltimore and like Lamar can just do whatever he wants. But yes, mobility in the pocket and in and out of the pocket is a variable that you have to account for basically every single week now. And again, I think it's really comes down to, do the Bengals have the personnel to match that up? They have speed, but do they have reliable speed? Do they have speed that they can trust to cut off those angles and force things back inside and all of that jazz, right? You need playmakers to make those stops and make those plays. And there just wasn't enough plays outside of obviously DJ Turner and Jordan Battle's interceptions last night where you felt confidence in that going forward. So it is going to be a lot on just, I think, coaching just to get the most out of that. Do
you think CTB re-enters the lineup after this week?
That's tough. You know, it's like, I think it really depends on how Josh Newton and DJ Ivy play in his stead. Like Newton, I think was okay last night, but you really need DJ Turner to continue playing like he has. And if he doesn't, then like the secondary as a whole just becomes pretty, mundane. Not mundane, but just like there's nothing really special about it. And Taylor Britt still has that ability. It's just for whatever reason he can't unlock it and he can't just put it all together. And I think it's probably gonna take him some time, I think, to really get into that position again. But it could just be a situation where he's forced back onto the field because the guys on the field right now, like if they don't, maintain their level of play, then they're gonna have to look at other options. At the very least, we know that this coaching staff has very short leashes on pretty much most of these guys on defense, and that can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing because too much change sometimes isn't good.
You look at that inactive list last night, John. Bad night for the Bengals front office in terms of high to middle round picks over the last couple of drafts. Second round pick, Cam Taylor-Britt, benched. McKinley Jackson, he was a third round pick, right? Benched. Jermaine Burton, third round pick, benched. I mean, you could go on, and it is just, those are critical misses in your classes right now. Britt had looked like a hit towards the beginning of his career, but has since fallen from grace there. So they're going to need to start finding some other, whether it is from those guys or other guys stepping up. That's just a bad sign of your draft classes of really over the last 3 seasons, each one of those guys, right? Or at least 24 and 22. So just not a good sign there. I do like that the offensive line has seemingly stepped up, and maybe that is because of the way that Flacco plays. I do like that the running game started to make some noise last night as well. Flacco looks like he's playing some of the best football that he can possibly play right now. So all of that really is, and Evan McPherson, the only, I think he's got 3 misses, and 2 of them, one was 57 and one was 67. So it's like, I think it was 4-4 last night, that sort of thing, including the game winner. So a lot of things are going okay for the Bengals right now. It's more that defense, and it's, they got to be opportunistic, but they have to be competent too.
Yeah, 100%. Shout out Evan McPherson though every point mattered in that game, and he's had
every point.
He's had a pretty nice bounce back season. I think Jay Morrison of SI Bengals Talk had a good story about how like 12 people in McPherson's life that really like helped him kind of bounce back and kind of recenter himself this year, and they were all at the game. So that was a cool moment for him, obviously, to kind of have that spotlight and make a game winner for the first time in a while. And yeah, that was really cool to see.
Yeah, well, my mic drop is a cool moment for somebody else, and that's Andrew Whitworth, who is the ruler of the jungle, and he was psyched. And both him and Fitz, I guess, were out the night before or 2 nights before, meeting with Cincinnati. Did kind of a little meet and greet and live interview thing, question and answer deal. So that was really cool. But Whitworth, you still see his love for Cincinnati shine through, even through that national telecast, and that's great to see. And for me, I know I wasn't there, and the stadium's electricity was probably incredibly palpable, but for me, it was just fun listening to all of the announcers, be it that pregame, postgame, halftime crew of the Amazon crew, or Kirk Herbstreit and Al Michaels just kind of laughing and chuckling about this game's bananas, and these two old guys out here are just slinging the football around. And it just was a fun game to watch. And even if they were impartial, it seemed like they had fun watching the game and enjoying the resurrection from Joe Flacco, which was cool.
I think a lot of people saw this game on the schedule like, it's going to be kind of ugly. You know, like these quarterbacks are like, they're okay, but like they're not anything special anymore, obviously. And I think a lot of people were very nostalgic about 2010s NFL football when guys like Flacco and Rodgers were at the top of their game. The titans of quarterback play, you know, before kind of the new age quarterbacks have come into the game. And the game looks different now, right? Like it seems like defenses have evolved in which they've taken away big plays, and it seems like quarterbacks have tried to get smarter and keep things underneath and everything like that. We've seen it from the best quarterbacks in the game. Now we've seen it from Joe Burrow even. So, right, and to have two true old gunslingers just duel it out in prime time in front of a ruckus crowd, that's football, man. That's the NFL. I feel like John Gruden just saying that. That's football, man.
Football, man. I tell you what, man. Pretty badass. And it was a fun game to watch. Obviously, a lot more fun watching the Bengals win instead of lose a heartbreaker as the Steelers did. But this has been the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. Thank you to FanDuel, our sponsor, as well as FOCO. Go check out our podcast on the Believe Podcast Network and the Believe in Cincy podcast channel. Check out our YouTube channel. Keep it to cincyjungle.com and A to Z sports.com, where John is hammering away at the keyboard for all kinds of Bengals and AFC North coverage. We thank all of you for tuning in live. We thank you for tuning in after the fact. Hopefully you all have a good football-filled, fun, safe weekend, and we will be back for more. John, I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
See you guys.